Hey, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining here at Unapologetically Progressive. Now, I got some news for you out of Minnesota. Apparently, there is a big mess going on in their state legislature there, and I thought I would bring some of that to you. We're going to start off with the easier stuff, and then we'll work our way to the messier stuff. Now, first off, in the Senate, they are tied 33-33, and the reason for that is because after the election was over, they technically had a lead. 34-33, the Democrats did in the state Senate. Unfortunately, one of their members, Carrie Dietrich, died of cancer, so they're back to a 33-33 tie. Now, the Senate has an agreement in place to deal with everything while everything is the way it is, to keep business moving the way it is, the way it's supposed to be. And they're working on that, and unfortunately, it's going to take a little bit of time. Tim Walz has ordered a special election to replace the seat. Now, Democrats are expected to win that seat, considering they won it in November, but you never know how a special election could go. But it is expected that the Democrats will win that seat, and then they would take over the chamber as in the majority. The hope is that the agreement that they have in place will maybe stand and allow for a little better bipartisanship in the state. We'll see how that all goes, right? It's obviously a very tight situation there politically in Minnesota. Minnesota's not necessarily entirely blue or entirely red. It's a very purple state, but they also have a lot of things that they're doing for the homeless, for school students, and to support the trans community while we're being attacked by other state governments and soon to be the federal government as of January 20th of this year. Now, over in the House, it's a lot messier. A bunch of problems over there. First off, they're tied at 67-67. Now, Democrats technically would have a 68-61 lead there, but there are two things going on. One, the Democrats decided that they would run a man, what we find his name here, Curtis Johnson, who apparently did not live in the district, and according to state law, to be a representative in the House there, you have to live in the district in which you're representing for at least 6 months. Curtis was not living there for 6 months. He claimed he was living in an apartment. A judge ruled that he was not there for 6 months and that he's ineligible. And so they're waiting to see how that works out, right? The judge, we're waiting to see if there's going to be a special election for that as well. And so that's causing a bit of a problem, right? That leaves us tied at 67. But the Democrats would have a lead if the Republicans were following what the voters wanted done. Now, there is a Democrat who the Republicans are refusing to seat. Let me find his name here. Brad Tabak? Brad Tabak of Shakopee. I'm not from Minnesota. I'm not familiar with any of these. But the Republicans are refusing to allow him to be seated. And this is what is causing the biggest problem. Because Democrats have refused to meet quorum. Right? They need, according to the person that's in charge of this stuff, like the speaker, I guess you would call them, of their state or their house there. He says that they have to have 68 people. Well, they only have 67, so the Republicans aren't meeting quorum. But today they went ahead and decided that they would elect themselves a speaker of violating their own court ruling, a court ruling, and the ruling of the person that is in charge of all that. But here's the thing. The voters voted for this man, apparently. Okay? Now, what creates the problem, Mr. Tabak, is the fact that 20 ballots, he won by, I forget exactly how many ballots, but he won by so many ballots here. Let me see, 14. Yeah, 14. He won by 14 votes. But there were apparently 20 absentee ballots that accidentally were thrown out. And There was a trial over this after the election, and Mr. Tabak won the election, according to the judge, because of the people that testified. Of the 20 votes that were missing, 6 people testified that they indeed voted for Mr. Brad Tabak for their representative. Therefore, the judge ruled that there would be no way, with the 14 votes he already won by, plus the 20 votes that were accidentally thrown out, which should never happen, by the way. There's no way that with those 6 votes that came from that 20 that were thrown out, that he would have lost the election. It would have had no effect on the overall outcome of the election. Although that is a failure on the part of the vote counters that needs to be rectified. It needs to be, taken care of by the governor and by the legislature. But Republicans are refusing to seat him because, of course, without him there, and with the potential special election coming up for Mr. Johnson's seat, of the guy that was deemed ineligible, that would give them, if a Republican happened to win that seat, that would give them control of the House. And apparently the legislature there is allowed to seat or not seat whoever they don't want to seat. But the thing is, when it's 50-50 like that, exactly 50-50, nobody really is supposed to have any leg up there, right? So things are kind of in a stalemate, which creates a problem for the people of Minnesota. The people in Minnesota, if they rely on things like taking extra help for taking care of disabled family and things like that, those funds are going to run out. Apparently this year is a budget year for them, and roughly $60 million in funding is needed for these programs to keep all their programs running. Of course, the people on the right may not care about a lot of those programs, but I know a lot of them are going to care about taking care of disabled people, because they have disabled families themselves who need home health care and be able to fund Medicaid, things like that, for people to go to the doctor. And this is what creates the problem, right? Is when one party thinks that they know better for everybody else. The Democrats have been relying on the courts to do their job, right? But when it comes to seating this one individual, they're not required to seat them, but they also can't seat them until there's quorum, right? Which the Republicans are claiming is 67, and the Democrats claim is 68, and the person that's in charge of all this stuff says it's 68. He happens to be a Democrat, which, okay, sure, right? But the guy won the election. The judge said he won the election and should be seated. But until that is taken care of and dealt with, they're 67-67. They shouldn't be able to do anything until that special election is done, and they need to seat the guy who legitimately won the election. A court ruled that election was valid, that the votes that were thrown away had no effect on the ending of the election. And this shows you exactly how far Republicans will go. They didn't win. They didn't win that legislature. They did not win the House of the Minnesota Legislature. They lost by 2 people. By 2. The people of Minnesota wanted Democrats in charge of their House and their Senate. As of right now, that's how that stands. So Mr. Tabak should be set. He should be seated, and they should be able to get things going for the people of Minnesota. Anyways, thanks for joining me. If you like this content, please hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell so you don't miss anything here at Unapologetically Progressive. And I'll see you down the road. May have some new stuff coming up for you for this channel very soon. Have a great day.